Good morning. I think we need to be out of here in about 5 minutes, so the final part of this is going to be whizzed through. So what I'll say first is, this presentation with notes behind it will be available certainly on the WJC website by the end of the week, probably on the Field Studies Council website as well, I guess. So if you want to actually look at in more detail at any of these slides, you will be able to do so. You saw this slide earlier on, a version of this slide, where Rob was talking about the fact that we're very good at the moment, both teachers and learners, at doing the collecting the evidence bits, the observing, the recording, the drawing the graphs, the analysing bits. But if you look at the whole of the inquiry process, those are the bits that are in red if you like. If you look at the whole of the inquiry process, there are other bits of the inquiry process that maybe we could sharpen up on a little bit. The bits in red, the observing, the collecting, the recording, the drawing the graphs, they fit under an assessment objective that we call AO3, the skills bit of geography. And I think we're fairly comfortable about that as a geography community, about what we're doing. But maybe we need to think about the other parts of the process a little bit more. So when we start looking at the things that Nick's just been talking about, setting the scene, observing where you're doing your field work, thinking about the questions that you could be inquiring about, and then evaluating what you've done, those are the things that are a little bit more tricky for the candidates to do, and maybe for us to assess. I'm talking about us in a wider sense, not just awarding organisations, but as a geography community. We tend to call those the assessment objective 2. It's to do with applying your knowledge and understanding. And AO2 is a tricky assessment objective. I think I'm going to have to rush through the next few slides. I was hoping this would be interactive, but I don't think it will be. Any quick show of hands? Anybody been north of the Arctic Circle in Norway? If so, you need to leave the room now. Yeah, I know you need now. Because you'll know what the answers are. I'm going to show you 3 pictures very quickly. Okay, have a quick look. Think about what processes are going on in these rivers and where within the river the photograph may have been taken. It's a short river. It's only 5 kilometres long, I think. And 3 photographs are all on the same river. Okay? And the key question I'm going to ask you is, which order do you think those photographs were taken in? Okay, there they are together. Just give you a moment to look at them. I did want some interaction in this talk today, hence the starter activity. You're going to go back to that hopefully at the end if you've not already looked at it. But quick show of hands, how many people think that the one at the top right there was taken closest to the source of the river? Quick show of hands. Okay, a few people. How many people think the one at the bottom was taken closest to the source? A few more people. How many people think the one on the left was taken close to the source? Oh, quite a few people. Yeah, very good group of hedging your bets, sitting on the fence. Mind those splinters. Somebody who chose the bottom one. Anybody suggest why the bottom one might have been taken next to the source?
No.
It's narrow. You expect them to be narrow near to the source of the river, and rivers tend to get a bit sort of wider as you go further down. Nick was talking about that earlier on. What about the top right one? People who selected that one. Why might that top right one be taken near to the source? Ah, thank you. Yes, you've got these large boulders in the river, which might indicate that it's it's not very far. We have this set idea, don't we? How did you know? Why did you think? That's the important question. That they were in a certain sequence. It's because you were applying a body of knowledge and understanding that you've acquired over many years through visiting rivers, sitting in geography lessons, telling your teacher telling you that they get wider as you go downstream and that the boulders get smaller as you go downstream, and watching videos about rivers. You've applied your knowledge and understanding of other rivers to that unique place, somewhere that you'd never been to before. This is taken from the current GCSE criteria. AO2 there, remember, applying your knowledge and understanding of geographical concepts, processes and patterns in a variety of familiar and unfamiliar physical and human contexts. So the bit that geography learners I think find difficult is going to that new place. They find the tasks easy enough, the observing and the recording and the measuring and the graphing, but they don't really know, as Nick was saying a minute ago, well, why am I here? How does this fit into the wider picture of geography? How do I apply my knowledge and understanding of other rivers to this unique place? How do I apply my knowledge and understanding of rural areas to this village or this sequence of villages that I'm going to? They're not very good at making that leap. Now, I deal mainly with GCSE, but my colleague here, Alison, at A-Level, says this more or less the same sort of thing about A-Level students. They find it difficult to see that wider picture. We call that AO2 at the moment, and we have this notion that rivers follow a typical pattern. I'm afraid I was messing with you there a little bit there. Those of you who've been to the Arctic will know that that is the sequence that those photographs were taken in, because this river is fed by glacial meltwater, right? Very variable discharge, so you get that nice braided pattern very near to the source of the river, and it finishes up in a U-shaped valley there. Those are probably glacial erratics in that river. So, but that doesn't matter. That's the messy world we live in, isn't it? Yeah, we shouldn't be taking students necessarily to places that we think are going to match the textbook. Let's try and get them to sort it out for themselves and apply their knowledge and say, actually, this river is a bit different. It's a bit weird. Something strange going on. You've got some cards that were handed out at the beginning. We know that kids find it very difficult to ask geographical questions. There are some strategies on the fronts of those cards for getting kids to think about what are we going to inquire about whilst we're here, so that they are engaged in the whole inquiry process, not just the collecting the data bits and graphing it, but actually thinking about why they're there in the first place, raising the question. So 4 different strategies on the cards, and if we had time, which I don't think we do, because we're going to get kicked out of here any moment now, I'm sure somebody from the jail will turn up and say, can you please leave? I would ask you to write down in that 3rd column, well, what is the AO2 behind the inquiry question that you thought about earlier on? What is the wider bit of geography? What concepts or issue or process or theory are you actually trying to attack? What is underpinning the geography behind this unique place? There's got to be something wider in your geography that is behind the study of that unique place that you've taken them to. So here's a few ideas that I had for that photograph, which happens to be an inner urban area of Cardiff. It's got the Millennium Stadium behind it. Here are some concepts, if you like, at the bottom: inner urban regeneration, gentrification, quality of life, severe influence, positive and negative externalities. They are the sorts of concepts behind a study that you might have done in that particular urban area. Okay, so here's the nitty-gritty. The document for the GCSE reformed content was published on the 9th of April last week. On the left there, you've got the assessment objectives in one of our current WJEC fieldwork inquiries. They will vary slightly from awarding organisation to another one. So if you were following OCR, they might be slightly different, but they would have those 3 components in them, in roughly those proportions. And you can see there that geographical skills, the dark shape, is quite a big chunk. And so we're quite good at that as teachers and learners, but we're not maybe quite so good at the application bit, the pink bit. Look at the shift. All right, the circle is smaller because only 15% of the total assessment will now be fieldwork, but look in the shift. There is no knowledge and understanding there. Skills is proportionally a bit smaller, and AO2 application is proportionally bigger. So that bit that we've been currently finding a little bit tricky at the moment, at both GCSE and A level, is actually going to become bigger in the future. So my message would be, we've got 3 cycles of controlled assessment and A level assessment of fieldwork in the current model. Let's try and get AO2 right now, because that would be good preparation for how things are going to change in 3 years' time.